I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating at me for weeks now. I've been driving truck for 8 years, and I thought I'd seen everything the road could throw at me. Boy, was I wrong. This happened to me back in March, around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. I was hauling a load of electronics from Atlanta to Detroit. Pretty routine run that I'd done probably 50 times before. I was somewhere in Kentucky, about 40 miles south of Louisville, when I started getting really tired. You know how it is. Your eyes start getting heavy, you're blinking more, and you know you need to pull over before you become a statistic. There's this rest stop I'd used before on this stretch of I-65. Nothing fancy, just your basic state-run facility with bathrooms, vending machines, and a few picnic tables. Usually there's a handful of other truckers there, maybe a family or two stretching their legs. Normal stuff. But when I pulled in that night, the place was completely empty. I mean, dead empty. Not a single car, not another truck, just my rig sitting under these dim yellow lights that were buzzing like angry wasps. The whole place had this, I don't know how to describe it, this heavy feeling. Like the air itself was thick. I should have kept driving. I should have pushed through to the next truck stop. But I was exhausted, and DOT regulations are no joke. So I parked, turned off the engine, and figured I'd catch a few hours of sleep in my sleeper cab. That's when I noticed the restroom building. The lights were on inside. I could see them through the windows, but they were flickering. Not like regular electrical problems, but in this weird rhythmic pattern. Almost like someone was flipping the switch on and off, on and off. I grabbed my flashlight and headed over to use the facilities before settling in for the night. The closer I got to the building, the more wrong everything felt. The temperature seemed to drop about 10 degrees, and I could hear this sound. Like whispering, but so quiet I couldn't make out any words. The men's room door was propped open, which was weird because these places usually have heavy spring-loaded doors that slam shut. I pushed it open wider and called out, "Hello? Anyone in here?" Nothing. Just the sound of one of the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. I did my business as quickly as possible, but as I was washing my hands, I caught something in the mirror that made my blood run cold. And there was someone standing in the doorway behind me. Just a silhouette, completely motionless. I spun around, but nobody was there. The doorway was empty. I looked back at the mirror, and there was nothing. Just me, looking pale and spooked. Get it together, Mike. I told myself, you're just tired. But as I was walking back to my truck, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the concrete that echoed off the empty building. I turned around and saw, I still don't know what I saw. It looked like a person, but wrong somehow. Too tall, maybe 7 feet, with arms that hung down way too far. It was maybe 30 feet away, just standing there under one of the parking lot lights. The light was shining right on it, but I couldn't make out any features. It was like looking at a shadow that had somehow become three-dimensional. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, looked again, still. Hey! I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. You okay over there? The thing. And I'm calling it a thing because I'm not convinced it was human, tilted its head to one side. Not like a normal person would, but like an owl way too far. Then it started walking toward me. I don't embarrass easily, but I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran like hell back to my truck, climbed in, locked the doors, and fired up the engine. As I was pulling out of the parking space, I looked in my side mirror and saw it standing right where my truck had been parked. Still just watching. I drove straight through to Detroit, didn't stop, didn't sleep, just kept going and pounded energy drinks until I got there. When I delivered my load the next morning, the dock supervisor asked me if I was feeling alright because I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I laughed it off, but honestly, I think that's exactly what happened. Here's the thing that really bothers me though. 2 weeks later, I was talking to another driver at a truck stop in Indiana. Guy named Carlos who runs the same Atlanta-Detroit route I do. I mentioned our rest stop in Kentucky, just making conversation, and his face went white. "You mean the one about 40 miles south of Louisville?" he asked. "With the flickering lights?" I nodded. "Man, you need to stay away from that place," he said. "That place is cursed or something. I stopped there about 6 months ago and saw things that... Well, let's just say I take the long way around now." He wouldn't tell me what he saw, but the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. I've driven past that rest stop maybe a dozen times since then, but I've never stopped. Sometimes I slow down a little as I go by, and I swear I can see that thing standing there under the lights, just waiting for the next poor soul to pull over for a rest. I still drive that route, But now I plan my stops better. I make sure I've got enough fuel and energy to get past that place without stopping, because whatever's living at that rest stop is still there, and it's still hungry for company.
I've been driving truck for 12 years, and I thought I'd seen every type of weirdo the road has to offer. Drunk college kids flagging down trucks for rides, people having mental breakdowns on the highway, you name it. But what happened to me on Highway 101 in Oregon last October? That was something else entirely. I was hauling a load of lumber from Eugene down to San Francisco. It was about 11:30 p.m., raining like crazy. You know how Oregon gets in the fall? The kind of rain that makes your windshield wipers work overtime and still doesn't help much. Visibility was maybe 50 feet, and I was taking it slow, maybe 45 in a 65 zone. I did just pass through this little town called Reedsport when I saw someone on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was just someone having car trouble, but as I got closer, I could see it was a young woman, maybe early 20s, standing right on the white line with her thumb out. Now, I've got a strict policy about picking up hitchhikers. It's just not safe, especially for a woman driving alone. Company policy forbids it too. But this girl, she was soaked to the bone. No jacket, and it was probably 40 degrees out there. She looked absolutely miserable. Against my better judgment, I pulled over. She ran up to the passenger side, and I rolled down the window. Up close, she looked even younger, maybe 19 or 20. Pretty girl, blonde hair plastered to her head from the rain, wearing just a thin sweater and jeans. "Please," she said, and her voice was shaking from the cold. "I just need to get to Crescent City. My car broke down and my phone's dead. I'll pay you whatever you want." Crescent City was right on my route, maybe 2 hours south, and she looked so desperate, so scared. I made a decision I'm still questioning. "Get in," I said. "But just to Crescent City, and you sit right there in the passenger seat. Don't move around." She climbed in, and immediately I noticed how cold she was. I mean, ice cold. When she buckled her seatbelt, her hand brushed mine, and it was like touching a corpse. I figured it was just from being out in the rain. "Thank you so much," she said. "I'm Rebecca, Sarah," I replied. "What happened to your car?" "Engine just died," she said, "right outside Reedsport. I tried calling for help, but no signal." Made sense? Cell coverage is pretty spotty through that stretch of Oregon. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. I had the heat cranked up trying to help her warm up, but she still seemed to be shivering. Every few minutes, I'd glance over at her and she'd give me this grateful smile. About an hour into the drive, she started talking more. Told me she was a college student at Humboldt State, heading back to school after visiting her parents. Said she was studying marine biology. Normal stuff, you know. She seemed sweet, just a kid who'd gotten stranded. But then things started getting weird. First, I noticed that the temperature in the cab kept dropping, even though I had the heat blasting. I checked the thermostat. It was working fine, pushing out hot air. But it felt like it was getting colder and colder. Then I realized I couldn't see her breath. Mine was visible in the cold air, little puffs of vapor every time I exhaled. But Rebecca, nothing. She was shivering and complaining about being cold, but no breath vapor. I started paying more attention to her, and that's when I noticed other things. When she moved, she didn't seem to make any sound. No rustling of clothes, no squeaking of the seat. And when I looked at her in my peripheral vision, sometimes she seemed translucent, like I could almost see through her to the passenger side door. "Rebecca," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "What year are you in school?" "Junior," she said. "This is my 3rd year at Humboldt." "That's great. What's your major again?" "Marine biology," she said, but her voice sounded different now. Distant, like it was coming from far away. I glanced over at her, and for just a second, she looked different. Older. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the entire eye, like looking into 2 holes. I blinked hard, and she was back to normal. Young, pretty, smiling at me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." That's when it hit me. The phrase she used, the way the temperature kept dropping, the fact that I couldn't see her breath. I started thinking about all the stories I'd heard from other drivers about this stretch of highway. "Rebecca," I said carefully, "what year is it?" She looked at me strangely. "What do you mean, just, what year is it right now?" "1987, she said without hesitation. My hand started shaking on the steering wheel. "It was 2023, Rebecca. I need you to tell me something. What's the last thing you remember before your car broke down?" She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "It was raining," she said, "just like tonight. I was driving back to school after Thanksgiving break. My parents had given me such a hard time about my grades, and I was upset. I was driving too fast and the road was slick. ... Single quotes, she trailed off, staring out the windshield. "Rebecca, what happened next?" "I don't remember," she said, but now she was crying. "I just remember being so cold. And then I was on the side of the road and cars kept passing me by. Nobody would stop. Nobody would help me. I looked over at the passenger seat and she was flickering now like a bad TV signal. One second she was there, the next she was transparent, then gone completely, then back again." "How long have you been trying to get home?" I asked. "I don't know," she sobbed. "Forever. I just want to go home. I just want to get back to school." I pulled over at the next rest area and sat there for a few minutes, trying to process what was happening. Rebecca was still in the passenger seat, but she was fading in and out more frequently now. "You can't go back to school, Rebecca," I said gently. "You need to understand what happened to you." She looked at me with those black eyes, and for the first time she seemed to really see me. "I'm dead, aren't I?" She whispered. I nodded. "I've been dead for a long time. 36 years, I said. She started crying harder, but no tears fell. And then, just like that, she was gone. The passenger seat was empty, and the temperature in the cab immediately returned to normal. I sat there for another 20 minutes, just trying to convince myself it had really happened. Finally, I got back on the road and continued to San Francisco. When I got home, I did some research. Found a newspaper article from November 1987 about a Humboldt State student named Rebecca Morrison who died in a car accident on Highway 101 during a rainstorm. She was driving back to school after Thanksgiving break when she lost control of her car and hit a tree. She was 20 years old. The accident happened about 5 miles south of Reedsport, right where I'd picked her up. I've driven that route probably 30 times since then, and I've never seen her again. But other drivers have told me stories about a young blonde girl who flags down trucks on rainy nights, always trying to get back to school. I think I helped her move on somehow. At least, I hope I did. But sometimes when I'm driving through Oregon on a rainy night, I slow down a little when I pass that spot. Just in case she's still out there, still trying to get home.
I've been driving truck for 22 years, and I've seen some strange stuff on the road. Weird weather, odd people, accidents that don't make sense. But what happened to me in Nevada 3 months ago? I still wake up in cold sweats thinking about it. I was hauling a load of auto parts, taking Highway 95 north through the middle of nowhere, Nevada. If you've never driven that route, it's about as desolate as it gets. Miles and miles of desert, with maybe one small town every 100 miles. Perfect place to disappear and never be found. It was around 3 a.m. on a Thursday night, and I hadn't seen another vehicle for over an hour. The radio was picking up nothing but static, and my CB was dead quiet. Just me, my truck, and the endless black desert stretching out on both sides of the highway. I was about 30 miles south of Tonopah when I saw something in my headlights up ahead. At first, I thought it was roadkill. Maybe a deer or a cow that had wandered onto the highway. But as I got closer, I realized it was bigger than that. Much bigger. I slowed down to about 30 miles per hour and put on my hazard lights. As my headlights swept over whatever it was, I could see it was some kind of animal, but not like anything I'd ever seen before. It was huge, maybe the size of a horse, but the wrong shape. Too long, with legs that bent in directions that didn't look right. And it was moving. Not like it was injured or dying, but writhing, like it was trying to get comfortable, or maybe trying to get up but couldn't figure out how. I stopped the truck about 50 feet away and grabbed my flashlight. Company policy says you're supposed to report any highway obstacles, and I figured I'd need to call the state police to come clean up whatever this thing was. But when I stepped out of the cab and got a better look with my flashlight, I realized this wasn't any kind of animal I'd ever seen. It had fur, or what looked like fur, but it was patchy and falling off in clumps. Underneath, the skin was pale and looked almost human. The legs were all wrong. Too many joints, bending backwards and forwards like they were made of rubber. And the smell. God, the smell was like a slaughterhouse mixed with rotten eggs. But the worst part was the head. When my flashlight beam hit it, the thing turned to look at me, and I saw its face. It had human eyes. Not animal eyes, but human eyes. Wide and intelligent and absolutely terrified. And when it saw me, it opened its mouth, which was full of human teeth, not animal teeth. And it spoke. "Help me," it said. And the voice was completely human. A man's voice, middle-aged, desperate. "Please help me." I dropped my flashlight and stumbled backward. This wasn't possible. Animals don't talk, and even if they could, they don't have human voices. "What are you?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know," it replied. And now I could hear it crying, actually crying, with tears running down what was left of its face. I don't know what's happening to me. I can't move right. I can't remember. I picked up my flashlight with shaking hands and shined it on the thing again. Up close, I could see that parts of it were definitely human. The hands, which were twisted and elongated, still had fingernails. Human fingernails. And when it tried to move, I could see it was wearing the tattered remains of clothes. "What's your name?" I asked. "Tom," it said immediately. "Tom Patterson. I'm from Reno. I was driving to Las Vegas for work and then I was here. But I'm different. I'm wrong. Everything's wrong." I grabbed my CB radio and tried to call for help, but all I got was static. My cell phone showed no signal. We were in the middle of nowhere, and I was dealing with something that shouldn't exist. "Tom, how long have you been here?" "I don't know," he said, and his voice was getting weaker. "Days, maybe? I can't tell. The sun comes up and goes down, but I can't move. I can't get up. And I'm so hungry. But when I try to eat, nothing tastes right. Everything tastes like..." He trailed off. "Like what, Tom?" "Like meat," he whispered. "Everything tastes like meat. Even the dirt. Even the air." I was backing toward my truck now, because this was getting too weird, too dangerous. But Tom must have sensed I was leaving. "Don't go!" he cried out. "Please don't leave me here. I need help. I need someone to tell me what's happening." "I'm going to get help," I lied. "I'm going to call the police." "No!" he screamed, and the sound was horrible, half human, half something else. "They won't understand! They'll kill me! You have to help me remember!" "Remember what? How I got this way? Why I'm like this? I was normal yesterday, or was it yesterday? Was I ever normal?" He was getting more agitated, trying to move toward me. The way his body contorted was nauseating. Joints bending wrong, limbs stretching longer than they should, the sound of bones cracking and reshaping. "Tom, I need you to stay calm," I said, one hand on my truck door. "Just tell me the last thing you remember before this." "I was driving," he said, and his voice was calming down a little. "Late at night, just like you. I saw something in the road, just like you did. And I stopped to help, just like you're doing." My blood ran cold. "What did you see in the road, Tom?" "Something like me," he whispered. "Something that used to be human. And when I got close, when I tried to help, it touched me, and then I was like this. And then I was in my truck now, door locked, engine running. But I could still hear him through the closed windows. Don't you understand?" He was yelling now, his voice getting more distorted, less human. "This is how it spreads. This is how it happens. You see something in the road, you stop to help, and then you become the thing in the road." I put the truck in gear and started driving around him. giving him as wide a berth as possible. But as I passed, he managed to get to his feet, or what were left of his feet. He was tall now, maybe 8 feet, swaying back and forth like a tree in the wind. "You can't leave me," he screamed. "If you leave me, I'll be here forever. And someday, someone else will stop. And then there will be 2 of us. And then 3. And then..." I floored it. I drove as fast as that truck would go until I reached Tonopah. And then I sat in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner for 3 hours drinking coffee and trying to convince myself it had been a hallucination. But I couldn't shake what Tom had said about seeing something in the road, stopping to help, and then becoming the thing in the road. It made a horrible kind of sense. When the sun came up, I called the Nevada State Police and reported an obstacle on the highway. Told them it was a large animal, possibly injured. They said they'd send someone to check it out. 3 days later, I called back to follow up. They told me their officers had driven that stretch of highway twice and hadn't found anything. No animal, dead or alive. No evidence of any kind of obstruction. But here's the thing that really scares me. 2 weeks after my encounter, I was talking to another driver at a truck stop in Utah. Guy named Pete who runs routes through Nevada all the time. I asked him if he'd ever seen anything weird on Highway 95, and his face went pale. "You mean like that thing pretending to be roadkill?" he asked. I nodded. "I saw it about a month ago," he said. "But I didn't stop. Something about it looked wrong, you know? So I just kept driving." "What did it look like?" "Like it used to be human," he said quietly. "But bigger. Wrong. And when I passed it, I swear I heard it calling out for help." That was a month before I saw Tom, which means Tom might have been out there for at least a month before I found him. I've driven Highway 95 twice since then, both times during the day. I haven't seen anything unusual, but I've made myself a promise. If I ever see something in the road at night, something that doesn't look quite right, I'm not stopping. I don't care if it's crying for help. I don't care if it looks human. Because I think Tom was right. I think that's how it spreads. You see something that needs help, you stop because you're a good person, and then you become the next thing in the road. The worst part is, I keep thinking about what Tom said, about there being more than one eventually. What if this thing, whatever it is, isn't unique? What if there are others out there, on other lonely highways, waiting for the next good Samaritan to stop and help? I still drive long haul, but I've changed my routes. I stick to major highways now. Lots of traffic and good cell coverage. I avoid the lonely desert roads, especially at night. But sometimes, when I'm driving through Nevada or Arizona or New Mexico, I'll see a trucker pulled over on the side of the road with his hazard lights on. And I'll slow down to see if he needs help. Because that's what we do for each other out here. But if I see him standing next to something that doesn't look quite right, something that might have been human once, I keep driving. I just keep driving.